You're listening to The Alana Show with your host, Alana Vandeveer. One-on-ones with the important people who make our vibrant community run on the True Oldies channel and streaming anywhere in the world at trueoldiesfla.com. Now, here's your host, Alana.
Welcome back to The Alana Show. Today we're honored to have a true pillar of our community with us, Sheriff Ric Bradshaw, the longest serving sheriff in Palm Beach County history, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, thank you, with nearly 5 decades in law enforcement from road patrol in West Palm Beach to chief of police and sheriff since 2005. Ric has transformed our community with visionary leadership that shows. He's been nationally recognized with the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award and twice honored by the U.S. Secret Service. Under his guidance, PBSO has grown to over 4,200 staff in an $800 million budget, while pioneering crime prevention initiatives modeled statewide. PBSO is very community-oriented. Check out pbso.org to see upcoming events that they hold and community updates. So jump right into it. Leadership and legacy. So Sheriff Bradshaw, you've now been elected 6 times, which is incredible, and built a legacy of innovation and community-first policing. What core leadership principles have kept you grounded and able to adapt over this remarkable career in such a big county as well?
Well, the main thing is, I understand that we're not a political organization, even though I have to get elected. People know that I'm not political.
It's nonpartisan, too. Sorry.
Yeah, well, even though it's R's and D's, I don't care. I just do what's best for the community. Mm-hmm. So by always keeping that in mind and doing what the best thing to do is for the benefit of the community, then it's easy to make the decisions because I'm doing the best for the people that live in the community, and that we're looking for projects and grants and technology to make people's lives better by doing a more efficient job. So it's really an easy decision-making process. The leadership part of it is, I expect the deputies and everybody that works for me to keep the same type of principles. What's best for the community? Treat people like you want your family to be treated, and it works pretty good.
Yes, and you can see that too, and a lot of the reason I really wanted you on the show, and I thank you again for being here, is anytime we have a guest on, philanthropists, businesses, they mention Palm Beach County the sheriff's office being very supportive and involved in their initiatives, which is incredible. And very important in today's world, especially after, the riots, things like that, which we won't get into. But, it really does build community and safety and public service. So deportations versus criminal enforcement. I know you're excited for this one. So you've emphasized distinguishing between undocumented immigrants committed to contributing to society and those committing crimes, a delicate balance. How does PBSO effectively target criminal activity without casting a wide net over hardworking, non-criminal immigrants?
Okay, first of all, on your first comment about the community, I've given back $14 million to this community out of my law enforcement trust funds. That's the money I take from the bad guys. I give it to the good people. And we target kids' organizations that help families. Mm-hmm. So that's $14 million is significant. Now, the immigration thing was actually pretty easy, and we haven't doing anything different now that we've been doing for years. We will not do immigration sweeps. I've guaranteed the community that, and we won't. Now, there's 2 programs that the Border Patrol and Immigration have. It's called 287. One of them is for the jail. That makes the booking officers what they call warrant service officers, WSO. That allows them to serve a detainer on a person that ICE wants held for them. If they're not certified to do that, then the only person that can do it is an ICE agent, and sometimes you can't get a hold of them. So you may have a gang member that commits a crime that might be able to walk out on bond unless the detainer's on them. So that's one. The second part is a regular 287 program, which certifies deputies on the road to be able to take somebody into custody on a warrant that's outstanding for immigration and deportation. Only an ICE agent can enforce those warrants unless you're certified through this program. But that doesn't mean we go out and look for people. It just means if we have somebody, we stop, there's a warrant for them, or they committed a crime and there's a warrant for them, that we don't have to wait on an ICE agent. We can actually serve it on them right there with our people.
Well,
so those are the two programs.
Okay. In Florida, I think in comparison to other states, obviously everyone's pretty familiar that we had a large influx. I mean, they say somewhere around 10 million just coming into the country. In Florida, I think has a better understanding of illegal immigrants coming in, even though if they're not criminals. So they have a good system. What advice would you give to states that aren't really familiar with that process and, kind of excluding California, but if how they, the best way to go about it for, safety measures and without alarming the community, if you will?
Well, here, the bottom line is, we're going to go after the bad guys.
Yes.
The gang members, the Tijuana guys, the MS-13 guys, people that commit crimes in the community. But we tell people, look, if you're a hardworking person and you don't commit crimes, you don't have anything to worry about. I mean, we know that there's illegals out there that work in the fields, that work in the entertainment business, that work in the hotels and everything. We're not going there and looking for people that are involved in that. That's not what we do.
Now, with that said, are there avenues, let's just say somebody's been here for, 5 years illegally or whatnot, they're law-abiding, they're working hard, and is there an avenue or some sort of thing they can sign up for, especially during all this chaos, where they can get citizenship properly and have some of that credited towards it? I know a lot of people are concerned about reform and they just think, no, we don't want anybody in here. Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case, whether, which side of the aisle you're on or if you have no, party affiliation. It's, doing the right thing and getting good people here versus criminals, like you're saying.
Well,
and
absolutely.
Keeping them.
And there's some methodology that immigration enforcement has to do that, right? So all they got to do is get a hold of the immigration people, and there's immigration lawyers that will do this free of charge, and
good.
They'll walk them through the process, and that's all I think that anybody is asking. On the political side of this, is just go through the process that is right, because there's a lot of people that have gone through the process. And, they're kind of upset, and rightfully so.
Kind of. They were more upset than anybody I knew. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, yeah, because other people just came in and got a better advantage than they did, and they went by the rules.
Well,
so that's the issue.
I went on a date. Well, not important. This guy that I was talking to years ago, he hired an attorney, and let's just say he didn't do a good job and stole his money and left. The attorney did a couple $100,000. He got deported, had to work his way back, and very successful here. He did. He kept trying, and he was one who was the most upset about people coming in illegally and doing that when he for years and years was trying to get it. And I know another kid that was deported to Canada during COVID, like right in the middle of COVID, because his visa was up. So I find now he's a citizen. But they work really hard to get it and obtain it, but they have a love for America too that is actually profound, I've noticed. They have like a better understanding, if you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
And these people, they go to work every day. They work hard. They get paid, and they don't bother anybody. They're not involved in illegal activities. They just go about their business. More times than not, we found that a lot of these people were victims of crimes because the bad guys know that they don't, have access to the banking system.
Yeah.
Lake Worth was a prime example of that. But we worked with the banks in Lake Worth to be able to get a basic access to the banks so they didn't have to carry their money in their pockets.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we could do a little better with reform, but I definitely think that it's necessary to get the criminals out, without a doubt, and, make it procedural and, keep checks on people that are coming in. So can you walk us through, we covered this, but just a little bit more in depth. Can you walk us through how your office identifies separate criminal undocumented offenders from those living and working here lawfully without legal status, and what protocols and partnerships are in place?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is let's say we stop somebody on a traffic violation, and they run their name, and it comes back that they have a warrant for deportation through ICE. Then we'll take them into custody. Or if, in fact, we have somebody that commits a crime, and we find out they're illegal, then we put the detainer on them. because they're going to go. So it's all about people that are identified as bad guys, right? Not just normal citizens that are out here, doing their job like we talked about. And the people of the community know about this. I have really gone out of my way to do town hall meetings. We had a great big one over at the Hilton where we had about 800 people here to tell everybody, look, don't be afraid of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yep.
You don't need to be afraid of us. Now, I don't have any control over ICE. They may come and do whatever they're going to do. And, if they call for us to help them, I got to go help them. That doesn't mean I help them grab people. It just means I help them transport people. Two different things. Well, I just want the people to know you don't have to be afraid of us. You could call us for help. You could call us for whatever it is. We're there to make your community safe. We're going to get the bad guys out of there.
Mm-hmm. And I will say I do have empathy and an understanding for, being afraid, even if they're law-abiding, hardworking, is, not every county is like Palm Beach County. And in fact, and I go around telling people it is the best. And because it is. I mean, between the community, between the understanding, the empathy, and the ability to properly execute things. And I think, it maybe has a lot to do with, you, obviously, leadership. It's why you wanted you on. But, having the President of the United States in the county for, one term and then now his second. And it shows profoundly within the community and how they operate. So I do thank you for that. In the record book, so your office launched multi-agency units from public corruption to sexual predator task forces that have become statewide models. Which of these initiatives are you most proud of and why?
Well, I mean, the public corruption thing is where we partner with the state attorney's office. We have people assigned to that over there, and that's important because we want to make sure that people have confidence in law enforcement and keep the integrity level high. The sexual predator part is part of the human trafficking task force that we're involved in. And, it's a partnership with us and the federal government, and then we have other agencies within the county that work there, and we kind of run the task force. So they're both important. The one that affects the safety of the community the most, though, is the sexual predator thing, where we can take these predators off the street, whether they're working through the computer, whether they're doing child pornography, whether they're involved in out here trying to grab kids off the street. We work very, very hard at that, and we've done a good job with it. But that's part of making the community safe, where people are not afraid to, take their kids to the playground because they're worried somebody's going to grab them or something. Right, but and then we work very close with the community to give them information that says, "Hey, this is what you got to look out for, and this is why you got to monitor your kids online. You got to make sure you know what they're doing."
Yes, I agree. Yep. That's and another impressive thing of Palm Beach County and your leadership is the ability to, you have the illegal immigration criminals going on. You have all of these, the president here, you have, going after sexual predators, which is incredibly important because that will ruin lives and, essentially cause more issues in the future. And you guys handle all of them efficiently. I mean, I think.
It's really, our guys do a great job. Mm-hmm. One of the units that, and this is kind of a parallel subject, but one of the units that I'm really, really proud of is, and I started this 11 years ago, is the mental health unit. And when I did that, people said to me, the sheriff, that's not your job, mental health. But once I explained to them that there's so many things in this job and so many of the things that we do every day that's involving mental health, they got a better understanding of it. Mental health is substance abuse, whether it's drugs or alcohol. Mental health is family violence, domestic violence. Mental health is your people that go out here and do these active shooter things where they shoot up a school or a business. So mental health is a very, very important aspect. And I started this unit that has grown from one team into about 8 teams. So the team is a deputy that has a master's or a PhD in psychology, and then I hire a professional from the community to be his partner. So there's a working professional that actually has done, clinician work, and then the deputy. They have been unbelievably successful. And I'll give you a real quick example, and you might have remembered it. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we arrested a guy that lived in the acreage, and in his house, he had 18 firearms. He had 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Nice. He had uniforms that looked like a deputy and looked like an FBI credentials and looked like somebody from the military.
Wow.
And he had a list of places that he wanted to go to shoot people.
That just happened in Minnesota or similar. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this guy that we arrested had talked to the person that shot the school up in Wisconsin. That's how he got his name and started working on it. But he had a list. He says, I want to go to a church. He wants to go to a law enforcement facility. He wants to go to a school and shoot all those people.
Disgusting.
But he never got the chance because of this unit identifying him, working it, getting the warrants for his arrest, and then going and getting them and taking all this stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, that is scary.
That's pretty damn important.
No, that's very damn important. Well, especially when you look at Minnesota. I mean, that is, it sounds unbelievable and crazy, but it happens. And if it's not stopped, you have a perfect example up there in a state legislators of all people, and he had a long list. Further, I'm sure you're familiar with that, but I'm really glad you brought that up. So the mental health unit, I had mental health Palm Beach County on, and they had mentioned that they work closely with you. And, we've had many discussions is, if somebody's having mental health issues and you treat them like a criminal, is that going to make longer lasting impact for negativity as opposed to if you take a different approach with them? And an example would be that kid from the Gulf Coast that had mental health issues, tried them for, I don't know, mass littering or something, gave him 3 years. Even the judge said, he retired and regretted the decision, but then they moved him over to this coast, away from his family, away from, kind of isolated him, and then for whatever reason gave him a chainsaw and he killed himself in prison, which, that story is just absolutely wild. But he was a homeschool kid who, drove a car into a pond, obviously having mental health issue. And, I think there are other avenues, and then prevention more than anything, if you can see those alarming signs. This is an extreme situation, but I think that is I think that should be implemented nationwide as opposed to.
It is. It is. But,
awesome.
and to make sure that everybody understands, everybody that's got mental health issues is not dangerous. It just happens to be one of the aspects of somebody that's involved in all these violent crimes, right? It just happens to be one part of it, which is the most important part of it, because, you want to get them ahead of time. And the whole emphasis for us is, get them before they do something wrong, right? It's not necessarily about an arrest. Get them the help that they need. Now, if they committed a crime, that's different. But get them the help that they need before they go do something. That's the whole idea.
I like it. No, I agree with that entirely. With no career or no careers without lessons. So looking back, is there a decision or initiative you'd approach differently if given the chance?
Wow. That's a huge question.
I thought you were going to say no. The way you operated looks good.
No.
Just comes naturally.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I look back at body cameras, and we didn't get involved in that for a long time. And there was a lot of reasons why I decided not to. I just wasn't comfortable with them. I didn't think the technology was right, and I thought there was a lot of issues. So it took us a while to get to the point where we got them and use them, and I'm glad I made that decision. I probably should have made it earlier than I did. And if I had it to do over again, I would probably do it quicker. But that's an example of what you're talking about.
Do you have pretty strict policies on that within Palm Beach County, like leave it on while you're doing an arrest, or, between muting or things like that, like with the officers?
Yeah, there's a strict policy on when they turn them on, when they turn it off. If we're going into somebody's house, unless there's a crime in progress, we turn them off, and then when we get in there, we ask the people, is it okay for us to turn it on? There's a lot of situations where that because of the privacy issue, you have to turn them off.
Oh, that makes sense. And then, I was going to get into your hiring process, because it's just evident when you run into one of your sheriffs that, they're just a different breed, if you will. But it's, how do you go about that just for other agencies, or especially with your, Secret Service and then your Marine, how do you go about that? when you look to hire?
We go through about 25 people to find one.
Okay.
And the reason is we have very, very stringent background checks and, qualifications to get into the process. We want people that have at least 2 years of college. Sometimes we'll waive that depending on, what their life experience is. Mm-hmm. But the background work is very important. And like I say, we go through at least 25 people to get to the one because, the young people coming up, I don't think they think too far ahead. It's all about today. They get involved in drug use. Their credit is terrible. Their driving records are terrible. They've got issues that were dealing with their family. And we're not going to get involved with those people because they got problems that they could carry over into the job. We have to have people that think about this job, that have, legitimate wants to do this job to help people, right? Not just get a job. So, like I said, it takes us a while to find the right one, but we have a good record of when we get them, they do a good job. It
really does show. In the community, I just want to say real quick, PBSO.org, they do a lot of community events and then community updates there. It's always really up to date, especially their Facebook too, I noticed. So Palm Beach Sheriff's Office Facebook and PBSO.org. And then, back to that real quick. So, do you do kind of mental health checks or like psychology backgrounds? I was always been curious about that. Like to say,
absolutely.
Okay, I would think that's important if somebody has,
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Part of the process is you have to take a polygraph, and then you have to go for a mental psychiatric evaluation. And if you don't pass either one of those, you're out.
Do they do that everywhere?
Pardon me?
Do they do that everywhere, like sheriffs or police, like around the country?
Most places do.
Okay, I would think that would be very important. And then personal triumphs and memories. So you've accumulated awards from the Chamber of Commerce, lifetime honor to national recognition. What stands out as your personal favorite accomplishment or a memory that still gives you pride?
Oh Lord.
No, it's a hefty one.
I think the lifetime achievement from the president was probably one that really hit me the most because that takes into consideration, what you do with the job, your involvement in the community, your experience, how people feel about you in the community. So it's a pretty comprehensive check of the person that's going to get the award. And, we're really proud about how we connect with the community. You were talking about the website. There's so many different programs that we have on there. One of the programs that we started about a year ago is every weekend we go to different parts of the county and we just have a food distribution. It's free. We partnered with a company that gets the food for us, and then we go to these locations and we'll service maybe 1,000 to 2,000 families a weekend in different parts of the community.
You're talking about Restoration Bridge, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they were on the show too. We were talking about how great you guys are.
Yep, those are the people that we partner with, and
Excellent.
we do it every weekend. And that, because there's a lot of people that, it's hard for them to make ends meet, and we realize that. So this helps them out. And then we do kids programs, and, there's a multitude of things that we get involved in out here that people need to know about.
It really does show in the community, too, and it builds trust. When you see a PBSO officer come up to you, it's more friendly than it is intimidating. And, I think that is important for a community.
Absolutely.
Very, very. And then I saw a car seat they were doing. I mean, you guys, I just encourage everyone to check out PBSO.org, whether you want to go to an event or just get community updates. So, mentoring the future. So, as the industry evolves, what wisdom or advice would you share with the next generation of law enforcement leaders here in Palm Beach and beyond in Florida?
Well, they got to remember their primary mission is to keep the community safe. And in order to do that, they have to build up trust in that community. They have to be able to work with them, and they have to be able to have their deputies or officers in their departments have that attitude of, I'm not there to intimidate you, I'm there to help you. Because that way, people will call us. Look, the best system we got going is if you know something, say something. Mm-hmm. Because everybody out here, I don't care who you are, right? You see it all the time. And the fact that these active shooter things where it's over with and somebody comes forward and says, well, I knew that was going to happen. Well, who did you tell? Who did you tell?
Yeah.
Whether it's a schoolmate, whether it's a family member, whether it's a coworker, all of them see what's going on. All of them know what the people are saying on the internet. It's just they don't get involved because they don't maybe have that trust factor in the law enforcement people to do what the right thing is.
Correct. And I was just about to bring that up is, in the community I grew up in, Minnesota, Forest Lake, they actually have exceptional police there, regardless of, what has taken place, especially up in the suburbs or up north. And we weren't afraid, to call the police. It was more, they'd show up and they'd be rational, not aggressive, and actually talk through the situation, whatever it would be, whether, unfortunately we were having a party or, and they'd sit everybody down. And then if anybody ran, they'd get a ticket and things like that. But you felt comfortable, if you needed to call them or talk to them, as opposed to feeling like you were going to get drilled or, brought in or, the fifth degree just for having them show up. You didn't want to waste their time, obviously, when they're out busy in the community doing important things. But at the same time, without reservation, feel comfortable and content calling, your public safety people, which not everybody does. You go to other communities, they're intimidating, they can be aggressive. And I just don't think that, they stand even close to what Palm Beach PBSO does, which is why it makes you as a leader so great. And, I'm just not fluff. I truly believe that. I've seen I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, across the United States, and I've heard a lot of stories like everybody. And that's just not the case here that I've seen.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that because we feel that there's no piece of information that's not important. Mm-hmm. It may not feel important to you, but it may be the little piece of information that we need to put the puzzle together.
Now, is there a hotline for something like that, or like a?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of them.
Oh, good.
Yep, there's apps out here that we have that you can report something, and you don't have to get your name involved. You can do this anonymously. Yeah, you can just say, look, you need to know about this, this, and this, and that's it. We don't need to give your name or anything. Just give us the information. We'll do the rest.
I think that would be important if you see, maybe like a trafficking house, or you have, suspicions of, illegal drug dealing, heavily, things like that. Those kind of things that can be reported there.
One of the examples I'll give you is with the human trafficking thing. We had somebody call us and say, look, I live next door to this motel. And there's just people, guys, constantly up and down the stairs going to this one room. Oh. And I don't know what's going on, but that's a little suspicious. Well, sure enough, when we checked up there, two people had some young girls up there, and they were involved in prostitution. And that was a human trafficking thing. But if the person hadn't called us and says, hey, I just don't feel comfortable about what's going on there, we'd have never known.
Amen. Yep. So feel free to report, especially things like that. So I'm glad that they were brought to safety and that was wrapped up. That's gross. And important for, I would think down in Florida, too, with all the transient people and tourists, that would be a major issue. So report it early and often.
This goes back to the point that I remember my mother saying this. If you got a feeling that something ain't right, it probably ain't right. Mm-hmm. And all of us have got enough, lifetime experience to look around and go, something ain't right about that. Mm-hmm. And if that's the way you feel, then you need to tell somebody.
Somebody that's going to do something the right way, which is PBSO.
Absolutely.
Amen. Yep. All right. So vision for the future. And let's see. What is your dream for the future of Palm Beach County's safety and community connection? And how might other counties across Florida replicate the success you've overseen?
Well, in a perfect world, you would say, we want to eliminate the gangs, which is tough because they have pretty good record at recruiting people. So when you take one off the street, there's always somebody to backfill it. But if we could take the gangs off the street that are responsible for violent acts and drug dealing and stealing cars and identity theft and all that stuff, that would be huge. right? And I that would be something that I would encourage every law enforcement organization to concentrate on and say, hey, let's identify the gangs that are causing the problem. Because there's an old saying, 10% of the bad guys do 90% of the crime. There's not like a tremendous wave of bad guys out here. It's usually 10%. And usually that 10% is involved in gangs. And what they don't realize is it's not the typical stereotype of what gangs were in the old days, right? These are pretty sophisticated groups. You know, they do identity theft. They do scams where they call people on the phone. There's one out there right now where they call people and say, hey, you know, we're at the sheriff's office. You didn't show up for court, and there's a warrant for your arrest, but you can post this bond with us, and you don't have to come. We get calls about that all the time.
I got that. I received one of those calls, and I was very.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scam. We don't.
No, that's.
If there's a warrant for your arrest, we don't call you on the phone. We'll knock on your door about 2:00 in the morning, right? So you know, people just got to understand that these gangs are sophisticated. You know, identity theft. It used to be narcotics as their big money maker. Now it's identity theft.
Well, that's like a Isn't that multi? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
Isn't that a multi-billion-dollar industry? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Sheriff Bradshaw, you're going to come back on the show. I'm just kidding.
I mean, these gangs are very sophisticated. Do not think for 1 minute that there are some stupid people in these places.
Well, I would love to do. Yeah, I mean, it's smart, but they have new technology and tools like AI that they can actually mimic a voice. They can, you know, I mean, you can do anything. And actually, I want to really do a roundtable on that. If you have any fraud experts, you could send our way, you know, or you even. And then have an AI expert and, you know, a few others. I think that would be excellent for the community to be aware of, because I don't think they understand. If you don't meet somebody, and if you do meet someone, be safe, but don't send them money. Don't do it, ever.
No, there's actually about 4 or 5 scams that they use the most. And even if you get a phone number, the phone number comes back to an offshore clone phone.
Yeah.
So you can't go anywhere with that. But I got people that's all they do is work these scams. So if you have a round table, I'll send an expert.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you so much. Sheriff Bradshaw, thank you for sharing your wisdom, reflections, and the heart behind your 4-decade commitment to Palm Beach County. You've shown us how compassionate enforcement, grounded in clear priorities and empathy, can be both fair and effective. For our listeners, whether you're tuning in on the way home or settling in for the evening, Sheriff Bradshaw's dedication offers a powerful blueprint. It's leadership rooted in service, community, and integrity. Thanks for joining us, and we're inspired and hopeful for what's ahead. Stay safe, and see you next time on The Alana Show.